Tim, it's great to have you aboard today. I have to say, I've really been looking forward to this conversation and just appreciate you making time out of your busy day to be here.
Likewise, I'm really excited to talk about this, and again, excited to talk to you. And I'm honored that you reached out and want to talk. So this will be fun.
All right. Well, let's get after it. Without going too deep, I'd like you to share with the audience, maybe in 60 seconds, an overview of your organization, FS Studio, some of the types of clients that you have been working with, and then just tack on a little bit about why you see healthcare as really ripe with opportunities within some of this emerging technology that we're going to get into.
Yeah. So FS Studio, we've been around for quite some time, since 2011. And basically our thesis, the way we see the world evolving, is that the world's going to be immersive, contextual, real time, and 3D. And so what does that mean? And what are the skills and what are the services that you need to create that world? And we see ourselves as training the intelligent systems and machines, so robots and automation and all the stack that's on top of that, perception system, as well as the next generation workforce that has to interact with this new immersive environment that's highly automated and highly aided by AI, computer vision, and robotics. So that's the way we see the world. That's our place in the world, is to help companies get informed and to get ready for and to produce products and services that are ready for this environment that we're fast moving into right now. And that exhibits itself in things like synthetic data, simulation, digital twinning, immersive experiences, data analytics and data visualization. These are all the underpinnings and the building blocks that allow for this immersive world that we're moving into. And immersive, it's not just VR and XR and all these things that you've heard. Immersive, it can be new ways and new modalities to interact with your visual data, MRI data, CAT scan data, things like that. It's contextual, it's timely, it's real time. So if there is, and that can be for natural language processing with LLMs, VQAs, all these kinds of things that allow you to access the right data at the right time, the right context, so you get the maximum benefit from all of your data and your infrastructure that you have around you.
Let's talk first about NVIDIA. Now, first of all, most of the folks that might be listening may not know, or maybe they do, that NVIDIA recently had a well-covered keynote event. What was all of that about? What was the big hubbub about Agility Robotics and your involvement with them?
Yeah. So there's, I'd say the holy grail for robotics are general purpose robots. They're humanoid robots. And so there are a couple different camps in which robotics, there's single purpose or very narrowly focused robotics, and there's general purpose robotics. And Agility is one of the very first companies that's able to have and does have a commercially available, that's out in the wild, humanoid robot that's out doing tasks that a person would do. And what we did with NVIDIA, and that's why NVIDIA was really excited to show it off on the keynote. But a big portion of that is you're dealing with non-determinism. So when you're dealing with robots like that are general purpose, it's a non-deterministic, highly variable environment. And so in order to train those robots, synthetic data simulation is key. And a bunch of the work that we did in the simulation world there was shown in the keynote. So some of the simulation environments that showed reinforcement learning, which is a huge backbone to some of the most recent advances in robotics, multimodal modeling, large language models, large behavior models, all of that. And so we were really excited because they showed off a bunch of our work that was very, very high quality, realistic, real-time 3D simulation work. In the realm of technology and medicine, our client roster includes clients like Kaiser Permanente, Verily, 2020 Therapeutics,
Oh,
Google DeepMind, Google Perception, Google Research, Toyota Research Institute, Stanford Research Institute. These are all
oh
Woven
wow.
Planet, which used to be called Toyota Innovation. These are all companies that we've helped.
Where do you see some of the opportunities for robotics to be, like I said, really transformative in these spaces?
Yeah. So there's there's a lot. So let's say on the device side. So right now, one of the big hot topics is not large language models, but smaller, more specific purpose-built language models. And these things can now run on edge devices. They can run on your little what they call SoCs, systems on a chip, and you can now have very personalized data sets that are very purpose built for the data in which you want people to interact with. And then you can have very rapid interactions with these data models. And that can be natural language interfaces that you would see for large language models. They could be things like VQAs, which is a vision question and answer system, which allows you to get intelligence around what a system sees. And some what are now old school, but weren't old school just even 5-6 years ago, which are YOLOs and CNNs. These are all deep neural nets, and they can all run on local devices. So all of a sudden now you can have a highly contextual, highly performant, highly intelligent device that runs locally. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why that's a great thing for devices. There's security and privacy. So if you can do these things with computer vision or with language processing and you're running it locally, then all of a sudden privacy concerns aren't such a big deal. Performance is a big deal. So there's some devices that are out there that are having some issues with performance if they have to go to the cloud and back. And if you're running things on the edge, you don't have to worry about that. There are other advances, things with large language models and that kind of modality of AI, which all of a sudden means that you have access to and ways to interact with huge amounts of data that you already have. But now what you can do is you can access it in an unstructured way. So before, when you worked with a data scientist and data analytics person, they'd go through, they'd say, what kind of information do you want to get out of this data? What ways do you want to interact with this data? Now you can train a LLM style AI on your massive amounts of data, and you can interact with it in a completely unstructured way. You can ask it things around um, side effects. You can ask it specifics around drugs and manufacturing processes. All these things, the same exact data, you can interact with it in 1,000 different ways.
Let's pretend we're looking at a company like Medtronic.
Yeah.
Instead of them going to the large language model, the GPT or the Claude or that sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
that organizations now are going to be focused on using small language models that have that ability to pull up intuitive, instant information. If you were in Medtronic, you could say, hey, in this process where we are manufacturing this device for measuring whatever in home health. Let's say it's a person's
Yep.
blood pressure or whatnot.
Yep.
How could we make this 20% faster? How could we how could we take our current processes at Medtronic device and streamline the development to do it at 20% less cost? Am I on the right track with that?
You're on the right track with that, as well as increased accuracy with the results that you're going to get. So less hallucination, less extraneous information that's not pertinent to the domain or the topic in which you're covering. Now, for something like Medtronic is a wonderful company in that they also do telemedicine. They have robotics
Right.
in medicine. So this is all things now where companies like us, or where this kind of technology can be very useful, is both in the immersive training of the personnel on how to use these robots both in theater or in this operating room, or if you're the surgeon or the doctor performing when you're a remote operator. So you can train the personnel and how to interact with that machine in different modalities. Now, the other thing you can do is you can also help train the machine, the robot itself, its perception systems. And you can do that with scenario generation of 3D scenes and 3D data, which is a visual synthetic data set. And that allows the machine to operate much more accurately with the um, the actual patient itself. Some of these advances that we're seeing now, and say like Tesla, a different domain, obviously, they've moved from a more traditional AI stack of CNNs, RCNNs, YOLOs, things like that, with an engineered approach, which is programmers actually programming things like if, then, blah, 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 blah. They are now training, they've got a very sophisticated loop of simulation and what's called IRL or in real life data. And so they get data from real life, they create simulations and scenarios, and they train their models, and they go back and forth, back and forth. And there's been
Wow.
incredible advances in self-driving because of synthetic data and scenario generation and this loop between real life and simulation.
There really is no limit. I mean, as you're speaking, my mind is thinking, all right, this could be used in the clinical environment in hospitals and big health systems.
Mm-hmm.
This could be used for health insurers in the processes they use with their claim payments, maybe, or detecting fraud ways. It could be used for medical devices, home health. I mean, really, as long as you have the data, there really
Yeah.
is no limit to where these small language models and perhaps working in with robotics could be applied, right?
Exactly. So the way we view it is the world is going to run out of real data, wild natural data, very quickly. And in order to keep these AIs and these systems running, synthetic data is extremely powerful tool to allow you to keep advancing. So when you need new data, new types of data, environments where you don't have a lot of training data from real life, then you can augment it with synthetic data. And the techniques and the quality of the synthetic data is getting better and better every day. Now, things like claims and things like patient charts, you can. There's a problem with privacy, and what synthetic data can do is it can create agents and it can create entities that are not based on real people. They are extracted, and you can create a model of a patient based across all sorts of different types of patients. They say, hey, I want to create a patient that represents this kind of patient. So you can harvest all this real data, abstract it, and then create a model based on completely synthetic data that isn't related to uh, personal identifiable information or a real person's chart in order to train your AI or in order to train your personnel. And that's very
Yeah.
powerful, especially with all of the regulations around HIPAA and what Europe as well is getting stricter and stricter. So that's another way that synthetic data can be very powerful.
So we're talking about hospitals and health systems, health insurance companies, medical device companies like Johnson and Johnson and Medtronic types, and then maybe even going into drug companies, pharmaceutical companies. Where do you see robotics being transformative in these different areas of healthcare?
Yeah, I see a few different things. So, for robotic automation, both on the patient and caregiving side, so those would be surgical robots, those would be healthcare robots, those would be patient care robots. They could be companion robots, things like that, telemedicine and mobile robotics. So, it's so the automation and robotics is great for logistics and operations. There's sanitation robots where you've got a restriction in the number of workers or people that can do certain types of tasks. That's where automation and robotics can step in. Education and training, that's where VR and AR and 2D immersive training can step in and allow you to have distributed systems for a distributed workforce to all interact together in a single platform and have a high quality learning environment. It's amazing, but these learning environments, their retention and their ability to conceive of the material in which they're being taught in an immersive environment is orders of magnitude higher than in traditional classroom environments. So there's a whole range of ways in which this technology can benefit.
Just going through your website and reading some of the articles, you use the term Industry 4.0 quite a bit. So,
Mm-hmm.
just for us newbies, what does that term Industry 4.0 mean?
It's the long and the short of it is it's basically the automation of the manufacturing process. So moving away from old school presses and tool and die and workers that are there on a production line into a new type of environment that's highly automated with robotics, where you've got automatic storage and retrieval systems, you've got cobots, you've got autonomous robots, you've got industrial robots, a highly automated workforce with a highly educated workforce that's interacting with this. And it allows for plasticity, so you can quickly change the volumes, change the products in which you're producing. You can produce things quicker, more efficiently. With more analytics, there's a lot more IoT with data that's streaming to, say, a digital twin or a data visualization dashboard that allows you to monitor the health of these environments. So it's a highly informed, highly automated, next generation sort of industrial manufacturing and fulfillment space.
Shifting gears here, Tim, let's talk about virtual reality and immersive experiences. So, there's been pushes and at times pushbacks on virtual reality. We know this from HoloLens from Microsoft. There's virtual therapies where you put on that headset and you can go through a VR therapy for mental health, and of course the metaverse. All right, we can talk all about the metaverse and what's happening with it, and what hasn't happened with it and fallen short. But the first thing I'd like is maybe in 30, 40 seconds, if you could you give us a primer for the audience? Talk about where you see these types of technologies and immersive experiences in the nearer term being most useful in healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. So quickly, the primer on that. So virtual reality is the headsets where it's a completely closed environment. It's you are seeing only what is on the screens. You're not seeing anything from the real world. And then augmented reality is when you have either pass through video like the Apple Vision Pro is, or you actually have passive pass through like the Magic Leap, and you're projecting information over top of the real world. Mixed reality is when the information that is being overlaid over the real world has context and can interact with the real world. And so the difference is, rather than just putting a screen up or like a little display over the real world with some information, that you can have objects that interact with the real world. And so it understands where the floor is, understands that there's a desk here, and you can put a virtual object on a real desk, and it will interact with that
Oh,
real desk. And then XR, extended reality, There's a whole bunch of different ways that people look at that or talk about it. But in general, it's an umbrella term for all of these different kinds of virtual modalities, AR, VR, MR. They all fall under the term XR. And so, how is it useful in medicine? I think it's one of the most useful modalities for medicine. The success of these new types of interfaces really has to do with product design. Make sure that you're designing the right experience for the right modality. Not everything needs to be an AR. Not everything needs to be in VR. Not everything needs to be in a headset. It can be on a screen and still be immersive. You really just need to
So
understand.
you're talking more 2D as opposed to maybe 3D.
Exactly. So I'll give you a really good example. So a really good example. So VR. We did a product in VR for nystagmus, and so we created a VR environment that eventually had pass through. So it became an AR headset. And what we would do is we did eye tracking of the individual eyes to stabilize the field of view. And so so in the VR environment, that allowed the patient to be able to read a book for the first time, to be able to interact with something without having the nystagmus get in the way of interacting in real life. And it was a true therapeutic benefit for the
And
patient.
nystagmus, just for the uninitiated, is what?
Nystagmus is a eye disease or eye problem where your eyes move randomly and
Ah,
track in different directions. Basically means that I'd say almost worse than being blind because you still see, but your vision is uncontrolled, and to a certain extent, like she can control certain aspects of it, but her eyes are still moving all over the place. So being able to stabilize that field of view so she could read a book, read recipes or whatever, social media, interact. That was a huge thing. And then so phase two was stabilizing the field of view for the pass through. So taking the camera view and then stabilizing that view so that her real world would be stabilized. So that's a good
wow.
example
Okay.
of, yeah, a really good example of something where the HMD is critical. That really wouldn't have been possible to do with your phone or with a tablet or any other way. And so that's a perfect example of the right technology for the right use case. Another example, which was a completely different modality, was a screen based experience, which was still immersive, still 3D, and it was for one of the largest integrated health system providers in the country. You'd know their name. But it was a really fun project. And it was something you could consume either an experience either on your laptop or on a headset if you wanted to. But most people used laptops or screen based systems. And it had a bunch of different experiences. And it was designed to provide a centralized place for a distributed workforce, a large distributed workforce that was spread across the country to be able to participate together in a learning environment. There was a lobby that would allow many to many interactions for people just to mingle. There were little breakout rooms for smaller groups to get together and have more private conversations. There were 8 learning modules that were based on a very specific curriculum that were designed. And then there was a large lecture hall, immersive lecture hall, that was designed to accommodate thousands of concurrent users, in which we had a studio that would volumetrically capture a presenter and then basically create a hologram that would be projected on the virtual stage of that presenter
Oh,
talking to
wow.
all the participants. It was like Star Trek. It was magical, and it worked extremely well, and it was very effective for getting a large distributed group of people together in a single environment.
Tim, it's interesting when you say that. Just all these ideas pop into my mind when you're talking about the immersive technology. I'm thinking to myself, can I see something on my mobile phone that'll show me the quickest way to get to my doctor's office once I park, or let's say a hospital or maybe an insurance company is hiring an HR person who's going to come into the office, and you can give them a virtual tour of the facility, or maybe a patient for that matter, like a virtual tour of our great, wonderful health system or new office or whatever they could walk through. Maybe even make appointments, make appointments online or even check your insurance online. Like, I'm just thinking about these virtual immersive experiences, and all these come popping into mind. So I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is technology that we're right on the cusp of collectively as a society. And so I'll give you some examples. So um, again, the magic is in the new state of the art modalities of AI, these large language models and multimodal models that are emerging that allow you to interact with not only textual data, but spatial data in an unstructured way and extract all sorts of different kinds of information and different interactions with the same data. So, for instance, you're talking about having a digital representation or a digital twin of your facility that can already be done, and you can. What we're getting to a point now, which is extremely exciting, is being able to uh, um, record a space and create a 3D map using the newest technologies, which are Gaussian splats, which allows you to easily and cheaply create a slice of your location. You can map out the entire hospital or the entire warehouse and then have a 3D representation of it. Now, the interesting thing here is you can have that associated with data. And that data, that spatial data, is associated with things like uh, uh, orthopedics or pediatrics or imaging or bathrooms or emergency or and all of the information that's associated with each of those things is now associated with that space, and now it can be temporal. You can have time series databases which allow you to look at a space in time. Let's say you've got a facility that's got a number of cameras. More cameras, more better, especially when it comes to these kinds of Gaussian splat systems. And you're sampling that data from the cameras, and you're creating a 3D map. Let's say somebody fell and hurt themselves. You can have an incident, and you can now that because that data is associated with a time series database, you can go to that point in time and you can see that where that person fell and how they fell, but not from a camera perspective, but from an immersive 3D perspective. You can now take a virtual camera, just like Minority Report, move that camera around in space. You can look behind her,
Oh,
you can look
wow.
over top of her, you can look wherever. And that's you can do a pilot project of that tomorrow, and you could probably have a commercialized product for something like that within a year.
Tim, you mentioned before about digital twins. And so let's talk about digital twins in healthcare. I'm hearing things about it on genomics. I'm hearing different things you're talking about with digital twins in terms of being able to take a physical space and map it. Um, how do you see it helping specific parts of healthcare? And when I mention parts, I'm talking about, again, the hospitals, the manufacturing facilities, the patient.
Yeah. So to piggyback on what I was just kind of talking before, there's different kinds of digital twins for healthcare. There's one of the big initiatives is the digital twin of the human body and the biological processes. That is fascinating, and that's not an expertise that I have. There's the digital twins of the physical plant and of facilities and operations, and that is where we have an expertise. And so those types of environments, if you wanted to create a digital twin of your hospital, if you want to create a digital twin of the warehouse, those kinds of things, they allow you to get real-time contextual information on that facility. That's one aspect of it. So if you wanted to do inventory management, if you had robots in your warehouse facility. They could go through and do inventory management and see the status of things back in the warehouse. Um, you could see the status of the robots and the workforce in that facility. Same with the front of the house or in a hospital facility where you've got, say, sanitation robots and cleaning robots, or you've got different personnel, and you could see if the personnel, if you've got systems, computer vision systems or RFID systems that are helping you to track people, then you can see where people are at a specific location, and that can help determine overutilized or underutilized areas in a space. It can help with facility planning. It can help with operations of the facility. All these kinds of things are things that you can do with a digital twin of the facility. And as I said, the exciting thing that we're seeing now is sort of these new spatial twins that are associated with qualitative data and unstructured data associated with that space. So that's a new frontier. So now all of a sudden, being able to sample through your existing camera systems, or if you institute new types of monitoring systems, cameras and sensors like that, now all of a sudden you can start getting more data that is more timely, more contextual, and more qualitative.
How do you see synthetic data, Tim, being used potentially in maybe financial interactions between patients and providers?
Yeah, I mean, you can start capturing real data and associating that. You can start creating models for behaviors. So so based on paying patterns, based on billing patterns, all sorts of things, you can start extracting really valuable data that you can start associating with behaviors. And once you've started doing that and start modeling behaviors, then you can start modeling different kinds of data associated with that behavior. So you can identify that data, you can identify those behaviors and say in different data streams, different points of time, again, protected. So you're not using people's actual information in order
Right.
to design these systems. The other thing you can start extracting is there might be like people people are rational actors, and for the most part, I think people will try and do the best they can, but there might be certain things in behaviors in which the hospital or the providers, the way they're billing or the pricing structures, there might be certain things where people behave well, and there might in certain billing patterns in which people behave well, there might be certain billing patterns in which people start misbehaving, or costs in which people start misbehaving. And then you can start
Mm.
putting together different kinds of payment payment programs, payment regimes, or changing the way that you're doing your billing to get people to behave properly.
Everybody knows today, at least everybody within healthcare, and I'm sure you've known it for years, but strategic partnerships, as we're seeing more and more, are really the driving force for in healthcare and health technology. Where do you see partnerships?
That partnerships are critical because um, the most efficient companies, most efficient systems are systems in which people are experts in their domain, and they have knowledge and exposure to the domain in which they service. So our domain expertise is in technology, robotics, automation, AI, synthetic data, those kinds of things. And we have domain knowledge on healthcare, and we have healthcare patients, and we rely on partnerships for people who are domain experts in healthcare law or medicine. And they give us the content and they give us the expertise. Then we apply the technological expertise and bridge the gap. And that's the perfect partnership. And with a vendor, a perfect example is, let's say, third-party integrators or integrators of systems. That's exactly what they do. And we think of ourselves as like a technology integrator. So if you're trying to build a robotic system or an automated system, well, the vendors could be ABB, they could be FANUC, they could be UR, it could be any number of things. they're experts in robotics, and then they would interface with a company like us to help implement the robotic platform in the context and in the environment. So we might help build the robotic work cell. We might create the simulation environment based on that, and help integrate all the different vendors and all the different parts in the workflow together in a simulation, and then help with the third party integrator that's going to build the system out so that there's not time wasted and not money wasted, and the system is built efficiently and quickly without loss of money and time.
Whether we're talking about medical device companies, retail health companies, insurers, hospitals, when it comes to adopting these new technologies and advancements like digital twinning and spatial data and AI and VR into their services and their products. I mean, what should they be looking to do and maybe looking to avoid?
So success is when a successful implementation of any new technology is really start with clear objectives. Know exactly the problem you want to solve and what success looks like to solve that problem. Then the users of the technology, make sure that the people that are going to be using this technology are part of the product design process, and you engage with them early and often to make sure you're designing something that works well for them in their context, and then you get buy-in, which leads to the third part, which is once you've designed this great technology and you've gotten the buy-in, make sure to do training. You need to train people. Otherwise, you're going to have this shiny object that people are either afraid of or intimidated by and may never use. And so it's a wasted investment. Then look for things that are pitfalls. The pitfalls, these would be like interoperability. So if you've got systems that this has got to operate with, make sure that you've identified some of those externalities and external systems, and mitigated that. Then some of these systems can be complex and expensive. Do a pilot first. Really try to solve one core problem, identify one core thing, and then do a smaller pilot to make sure that it will work. It's gonna solve the problem, and you haven't invested tens of millions of dollars into a system before you've run a pilot. And then, of course, all the other things like make sure it's secure, the data is secure, and you're compliant. And then make sure that you've got ways to measure the impact, because a lot of times the first thing you design is version one, and it'll be a living, breathing thing, and will need updates and will need improvements. And make sure you've got a way to measure and improve, because even the first iPhone didn't have copy and paste. So you're not going to try and eat the entire elephant the first time around. You might only start with the ear. So make sure you got a way to do that. So that would be my advice.
Tim, really enjoyed the time here, and it's just like I thought. My mind was blown, and I'm sure I'm not the only one here. So, how can healthcare and health tech organizations maybe learn a little bit more about your organization and then get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you, Steve. So they can go to our website, fsstudio.com/health tech, and they can get all of the information, that case studies and services and anything they need from that page. And we'd be happy to reach out. We want to help.
I'm sure our listeners have gained a lot of knowledge, and I know I have. So, just appreciate you taking the time, Tim, and looking forward to doing it soon again.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I love talking about this stuff. So yeah, this was a great.